Hey guys, welcome back to r/IDOWorkHereLady. In this story, a customer walked into my tech repair shop, declared that women cannot own businesses, and literally fired me from the company that I own. When I proved that I was the CEO, she did not apologize, instead she got violent and things got out of control. Today's r/IDOWorkHereLady Reddit story starts like this. So a little background on me, I'm a woman in my early 30s who started a tech repair business about 5 years ago. I called it Tech Fix Solutions, which I know is not the most creative name, but it gets the job done and people remember it. And by the way guys, just so you know, I changed the name of that one because I don't want to dox OP. So my mom wanted me to call it Daughter Knows Best Tech Services, which should tell you everything you need to know about why I handle the branding decisions. I started in my garage fixing phones and laptops for friends, then friends of friends, and somehow it snowballed into an actual company. We now have 4 locations across the metro area of the city, about 20 employees, and honestly, I still cannot believe it sometimes when I look at the books and see that this is actually working. Despite being the CEO and founder, I still love doing hands-on work. There's something satisfying about diagnosing a problem and fixing it with your own hands. My business degree came in handy for the management side, but my real passion has always been the technical stuff. So I make it a point to visit each location at least once a month, usually unannounced, partly to check on quality and partly because I genuinely miss being in the trenches. Also, and I say this with love, my employees behave very differently when they think no one important is watching. I once caught my night shift guy running a YouTube channel filming Will It Blend style videos with customers' old broken parts. He still works for me and the channel is actually pretty popular. On the day this all went down though, I was at one of our 4 newer locations doing exactly that. By the way guys, does anyone remember Will It Blend? That was truly a YouTube OG. Damn, time flies. Anyway, it was a Saturday afternoon, which is always our busiest time, because that's when working people can actually bring their stuff in. I was wearing my usual work outfit, which is jeans, sneakers, and a company polo shirt. Nothing fancy, nothing that screams, I own this place. I don't wear a name tag that says CEO or anything like that because honestly, I don't want to be treated differently. I want to see how my staff operates when they think it's just a regular day. I'd been in the back workshop for about an hour helping one of my newer technicians with a tricky motherboard issue on a gaming laptop when I heard a commotion at the front counter. Now, we get difficult customers sometimes, that is just retail. However, this one was different. I could hear a woman's voice getting progressively louder and more shrill, and my front counter guy Marcus was trying to keep his cool, but clearly struggling. For context, Marcus is the most patient person I've ever met. I once saw him spend 45 minutes explaining to an elderly man that no, we could not retrieve the photos he had lost when he switched from an iPhone to a Samsung because they were on a completely different device, and he did it with a smile. So when Marcus sounds stressed, something is genuinely wrong. I wiped my hands on a rack and headed out to see what was going on. The woman at the counter was probably in her mid-50s with that specific haircut that has become a meme at this point. You know the one. She was dressed like she was on her way to brunch at a country club, which made her presence in our little tech repair shop feel kinda surreal. Full makeup, designer handbag, the works. Her face was red and she was literally pointing her finger in Marcus's face while he stood there with his hands up in a placating gesture. She also had a half-empty Starbucks cup in her other hand that she was gesturing with dangerously, and I remember thinking, please don't spill it on the equipment, please don't spill it on the equipment. I approached from the side and she immediately locked onto me like a heat-seeking missile. She looked me up and down with this expression of pure disgust. I could practically see her taking in my casual clothes, my ponytail, the grease smudge I probably still had on my cheek from the motherboard work. She apparently decided I was exactly the target she needed. She then launched into this tirade about how her laptop had been there for weeks and nobody knew what they were doing, and this was the worst customer service she had ever experienced in her entire life. Marcus caught my eye and subtly shook his head, and I knew exactly what that meant. I dealt with customers like this before. I pulled up her ticket on a nearby computer terminal. Her laptop had been dropped off 2 days ago. 2 days ago! We quoted her 3 to 5 business days for the repair because it needed a new screen and the part had to be ordered. We were actually ahead of schedule since the part had arrived that morning and one of my techs was planning to install it on Monday. According to this woman though, we had apparently held her precious laptop hostage for an eternity. I calmly explained the situation and I told her that her laptop was actually on track to be ready a day early and that the part had just arrived and that we could potentially have it done by Monday if she wanted to check back by then. I actually thought I was being helpful. I thought I was de-escalating, but I was so wrong. She got right up in my face and told me that she didn't want to hear excuses from the help. She actually said the help like we were in a period drama and I was a scullery maid who had forgotten her place or something. She demanded that I go fix her laptop right now, this very second, and that she would wait. I explained that wasn't possible because we had other customers ahead of her in the queue and it wouldn't be fair to bump her ahead of people who had been waiting longer. That's when things took a turn though. She started going off about how women should not work in tech because we don't understand urgency or efficiency. She said that this is what happens when you let girls play with tools instead of learning how to actually do customer service. She demanded to speak to a real technician, specifically a man, because clearly I was just some secretary who wandered into the back and was now playing dress up. She actually used the phrase playing dress up. I'm 32 years old, I have a mortgage. However, I stayed calm, I really did. I mean, I've dealt with sexism in this industry for years. You kind of develop a thick skin or you don't survive. When I first started, I had a vendor refuse to give me a business account because he needed to speak to whoever actually ran the company. That guy's competitor got all my orders for the next 5 years and I made sure he knew it. But I digress. I told her that I was quite qualified and I could check on her repair status personally if she would like. She cut me off mid-sentence and she told me that women like me were what was wrong with customer service these days and demanded to know where my manager was. To be clear, I could actually smell alcohol on her breath at this point, which explains some of the intensity, but definitely didn't excuse it. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday and this woman had clearly had a liquid brunch. I started to explain that I could help her with whatever she needed, but she was not having it, and then she said the magic words. She pointed at me and declared that I was fired. She said that she was a customer, the customer is always right, and that she was firing me effective immediately. She told me to get out of her sight before she called corporate. Now, I'm not proud of what happened next because a bigger person probably would have just defused the situation, but I've been reading the subreddit for too long and I saw an opportunity for some beautiful malicious compliance. I shrugged and said, okay, I guess I was fired then. I made a show of sighing dramatically, taking off my lanyard with my keycard and setting it on the counter. I told Marcus that apparently I'd just been terminated by this lovely customer and that I would be over by the phone accessories wall if anyone needed me. Then I stepped back, leaned against the display and crossed my arms. Karen looked momentarily triumphant, like she had just won some great victory. She turned to Marcus with this smug expression and demanded that he fix her laptop right now since the incompetent girl was finally gone. Marcus, bless his heart, caught on immediately. He's worked with me for 3 years and he knows exactly how I operate. He put on his best apologetic customer service face and told her that he was really sorry but he couldn't authorize any changes to the repair queue. Only the owner could approve queue priority changes, and since she had just fired the owner, there was nobody available to authorize her request. I wish I could have recorded the look on her face. It cycled through confusion, then anger, then more confusion, and she demanded to know what he was talking about and what he meant by the owner. Marcus just gestured toward me with his head. He told her that I was the owner and that she had just fired me, so now he didn't have anyone who could approve moving her repair up in the queue. He said it with a completely straight face. That is exactly why I pay him more than any other counter person in the metro area. The woman's face went from confused to absolutely purple. She started sputtering about how that was ridiculous and that I was clearly just some worker. She demanded the corporate number. She wanted the real owner on the phone right now. She said there had to be someone above me, maybe my father or my husband. I stepped forward and pulled out one of my business cards from my back pocket. I handed it to her with the sweetest smile I could muster. I told her that there was the owner's direct line and I pointed out that it was me. I introduced myself formally as the CEO and founder of TechFix Solutions. And by the way guys, if you enjoy these r/IDOWorkHereLady stories, please don't forget to like the video and tell me in the comments where you are watching from today because that would help me tremendously. I mentioned that she just fired me from my own company, which was genuinely a new experience for me, so I thanked her for keeping things interesting. I wish I had a photo of her face at that moment. It went through about 6 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, rage, more rage, and then something that looked like a computer trying to process an error it couldn't handle. The blue screen of Karen, if you will. But here's the thing. Instead of apologizing or backing down or even just leaving with whatever dignity she had left, she doubled down in a way I genuinely didn't expect. She started yelling that my business card was fake, that there was no way a woman my age could even own a company, especially not a tech company, and she accused me of sleeping my way into the position, which I found fascinating, given that I started the company alone in my garage. I guess I seduced myself into a business license. She announced that she was gonna call the real owner because there was absolutely no way a girl was running this place. At this point, pretty much everyone in the store had stopped what they were doing. I had a teenager in the corner who had come in for a phone screen replacement, just openly recording on his phone. A middle-aged couple who had been browsing laptop cases was watching like it was dinner theater. One of my other employees, Deshaun, had quietly come out of the back and was standing behind the counter with Marcus. I could see a couple of my employees with their phones out, which I appreciated for legal reasons. I told her, as calmly as I could, that I was going to have to ask her to leave because she was causing a disturbance. She didn't leave though. Instead, she noticed that I had pulled out my own phone. I was opening the camera app to document what was happening in case this turned into a legal situation later, but she apparently decided that my phone was a threat. She lunged at me and tried to grab my phone right out of my hands. When I pulled back, she shoved me really hard. I stumbled back into a display case of phone accessories and managed not to fall, though I did take out an entire rack of pop sockets on my way down. And yes, it hurt, and I would have a bruise on my hip for a week afterwards, but in the moment I was more shocked than anything. Looking back though, I genuinely wonder if she was having some kind of episode beyond just the day drinking, because this was way beyond a normal entitled customer territory. My employees immediately stepped forward, Marcus positioned himself between me and her, and Deshaun was already on the phone with 911. The teenager in the corner was definitely still recording as well. I hope that video is not on TikTok somewhere, but honestly it probably is. I told her that what she just did was assault and that she needed to leave now, or else the police would remove her. Her response was genuinely unhinged. She screamed that I couldn't call the cops on her because she was the victim here. She called me a child and accused me of impersonating the owner. She threatened to have me arrested for fraud, and she said she knew the mayor. She said her husband was a lawyer. She said she would own this company by the time she was done with me, and then she pulled out her own phone and called 911 herself. I could hear her side of the 911 conversation, and it was genuinely wild. She told the dispatcher that there was a young woman at a business impersonating the owner, and she claimed I was running a scam and refusing to give her back her property. She accused me of assaulting her when she tried to retrieve her laptop, which was creative given that her laptop was in our back workshop and neither of us had gone near it. She demanded they send someone immediately because I was probably stealing from the real owner. I gathered my employees and quietly told them to make sure the security footage was being saved and to just let her talk. To let her dig her own grave, essentially. Don't interfere, don't argue, just let her go. The police response time in our area is actually pretty good, probably because we are in a commercial district with lots of retail theft, and within about 10 minutes, 2 officers walked through the door. The woman immediately ran towards them like they were her salvation. She started gesturing at me and telling them that I was a scammer and a fraud and that I'd attacked her, that I was holding her laptop hostage and that women cannot own tech companies, so I was clearly lying about being the owner. And yes, she said that last part out loud to cops in 2024. The officers exchanged a look that I can only describe as, this is gonna be a long shift. The officers, to their credit, remained completely neutral. One of them came over to me and asked if I could explain my side of the situation. I kept my voice calm and professional. I told them that I was the owner and founder of this business, that this woman had become irate when I explained our repair timeline, and that she had physically assaulted me when I tried to document her behavior. I offered to show them my identification and verify my ownership through business records. One officer went with me to verify my credentials while the other stayed with a woman. In my back office I showed him my driver's license, pulled up our business registration on the state website on my computer, and I also had a framed copy of our certificate of organization on the wall, which matched the state records exactly. Then I pulled up the security camera footage on my system and let him watch the whole incident from start to finish. He watched her get in my face and he watched her shove me. He also watched me stumble backwards into the display case, and then he watched her call 911 and lie to the dispatcher. He looked at me and his expression has shifted from neutral to something more sympathetic. He asked if I wanted to press charges for assault, and I said yes, absolutely yes. We walked back out to the front of the store, and the officer who had stayed with the woman looked genuinely relieved to see his partner return. The woman who was still ranting about how I had bribed everyone and this was all a conspiracy and did they know who she was. The first officer told her that they had actually verified my credentials and that I was indeed the owner and founder of this business. He informed her that they had also reviewed the security camera footage, which clearly showed her assaulting me. I genuinely expected her to finally back down at this point, apologize, ask to leave something. The jig was up, the lie was exposed. Normal people cut their losses. She was not normal though. She accused the cops of being in on it too, and she said I had probably bribed them. She demanded to speak to their supervisor. She started screaming about police corruption and how this was a setup. And by the way, guys, I mean, you can say what you want about this crazy Karen, but at least she's consistent in her craziness. She doesn't only want to speak to managers, she also wants to speak to supervisors of the police. Anyway, she said she was going to call the news, she said she was going to call the governor. The officer told her that she needed to calm down and that she was being detained for questioning. He actually used a very patient tone, the kind you might use with a toddler who is about to have a meltdown in a grocery store. She told them not to tell her to calm down. She then of course called me a liar and a thief again, and then she apparently decided that she was done waiting and tried to push past the officers towards the back of the store, presumably to retrieve her laptop by force? I genuinely don't know what her plan was. Maybe storm the workshop, fix it herself? However, one of the officers stepped in front of her and put a hand up telling her to stop, but she didn't stop. She actually tried to shove his arm out of the way, and that is when things escalated fast. The officer grabbed her arm to restrain her and she completely lost it. She started flailing and scratching, screaming that they were hurting her and that this was police brutality. Both officers were now trying to get her under control, but she was thrashing around like a cornered animal. One of the officers got her in an arm hold and she actually tried to bite him. Really bite like a feral raccoon in a designer blouse. The other officer gave her a final warning, clear and loud, so there would be no confusion. He told her that if she didn't stop resisting, she would be tased by them. Her response was to kick backwards, catching him in the shin. That is when they deployed the taser. She went down immediately and they had cuffs on her within seconds. Even on the ground, she was still screaming about discrimination, police brutality, and how she would have all of our jobs. I have to give her credit for the commitment, even if it was commitment to an absolutely losing cause. They hauled her out to the patrol car. One of the officers came back in to get my official statement and to make sure that they had copies of all the security camera footage. He told me that she was being charged with assault on me, assault on a police officer, filing a false police report, resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct. He said, and I quote, "This is gonna be a lot of paperwork, but at least it'll make a good story at the precinct." I told him I understood completely. The whole thing took about 3 hours to resolve, including the paperwork. By the time the cops left, it was almost closing time and my remaining customers were very understanding about the delay. A few of them had stuck around to watch the whole thing unfold like it was free entertainment, and one older gentleman told me it was the best show he had seen in years and asked if we did this every Saturday. I told him, only for special customers. He laughed and bought 2 phone cases. Her laptop was finished on Monday, as scheduled by the way. My tech did a beautiful job on the screen replacement of Karen's laptop, but obviously we were not gonna let her back in the store to pick it up. I had it shipped to her home address at her expense via signature required delivery. Included in the package was her perfectly repaired laptop, the invoice marked paid since she had already paid up front, and a formal letter from our legal team informing her that she was permanently banned from all TechFix Solutions locations, and I may have also included a business card. I mean, just in case she forgot who I was. The criminal case took a few months to work through the system. I had to give a deposition and was prepared to testify at trial, but it never got that far. The security footage really did most of the work. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had been having a mental health episode, but the judge was not particularly sympathetic given that she had called 911 to make false accusations and then assaulted a police officer. The day drinking probably didn't help her case either. She ended up pleading guilty to reduced charges in exchange for avoiding jail time. She got probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a fine. Part of her probation conditions included a no-contact order that keeps her away from me and all my business locations. She also has a criminal record now, which I understand has made her life considerably more complicated in various ways. Actions meet consequences though. And the next one is another beautiful r/IDOWorkHereLady story, which is titled "Lady thought I was a random guy stealing monitors. I am the IT manager." So I work as the IT manager at a mid-sized company, and part of my job involves replacing outdated equipment. Yesterday, I was rolling out old monitors from a few desks and loading them onto a cart when a woman I'd never met before stopped me in the hallway. She immediately went into full concerned citizen mode, demanding to know where I was taking company property and if I even worked there. I introduced myself, badge and all, but she still insisted I wait right there while she called someone in HR. Long story short, I ended up awkwardly standing by the elevator for 10 minutes until someone from my team walked by and confirmed that I, in fact, run the department. And the next one is another story from r/IDOWorkHereLady. It is titled, "I use a wheelchair and people just assume I cannot be a worker." The amount of times people have walked past me after looking me dead in the eye, asking for an employee. The worst part is, I am a manager. I got the keys to the place around my neck and the store comes with shirts, so it's blindingly obvious that I work there unless you are an ableist piece of crap. Just blows my mind, never happens when I'm not in the chair. And yeah guys, to be honest, it's sad that some people seem to equate physical competence with mental competence. Last time I checked, one of the smartest humans that has ever lived on this planet was in a wheelchair, Stephen Hawking. Anyway, thank you for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.